This is the webinar for March 2022, Moving Beyond Passwords. So just a few little housekeeping items. These Lunch and Learn webinars we hope to be launching about once per month, and we hope that they are useful information to you. Of course, we won't be able to cover everything. This does not constitute official advice or consulting. Every situation is different, and these will also be on stringfellow.com. We hope to put them up on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Vimeo. So if you have any ideas for webinars that you might want, give us a comment on this video and we'll be happy to take that into consideration. So this week we have a really exciting topic that somebody is going to be very familiar with, the idea of using passwords, right? So what are passwords and how do you secure your systems that you use, your work systems, your VPNs, things like that. So Jim, I'll go ahead and let you get us started.
Okay. Well, there's no silver bullet for security strategies when it comes to your company. And contrary to popular belief, just moving to the cloud by default is not secure. In some cases, if it's set up improperly, it can put your company at higher risk. Another belief is that 2FA is all the same. If you're using old school 2FA, then you're not as protected as you might think. And same with legacy antivirus, AV. Hackers are always probing for weaknesses and have found ways to compromise most AV solutions. New EDR AV solutions are required to keep hackers at bay. And if you're using a traditional firewall, it's time to use a modern cloud-managed firewall with a hardened defense that a traditional firewall cannot replicate. When it comes to local servers, your threat service expands and is very tough to defend. So Daniel, let's move on.
Sure. Okay. So the first thing, people a lot of times will just think, well, I'm using the cloud. So we've moved our company to the cloud, and so we are safe now. We're secure just by moving to the cloud. And I would like to say that that is not always the case, and in fact is probably rarely the case. So, people, I'm familiar with the idea of cloud computing. Cloud computing just basically means your files or your applications are hosted on somebody else's computer. That might be in a data center, it might be in Microsoft, Google, Amazon's clouds, but you no longer have the resources in your office on your network. So just by having a cloud system set up, your application might be in the cloud, that does not necessarily mean that that cloud is secure. So, you're going to need to make sure that that cloud is set up right, that it's managed right, and that your users are managed right, and that it's secure. So it's also an ongoing relationship with that cloud. And so there has to be security practices that are ongoing. So of course, a company like ours can help you manage that relationship, can provide that relationship, but I do think there needs to be a little bit of thought going into your cloud strategy. So Jim, tell us a little bit about basic 2FA.
Well, basic 2FA requires that an admin, a technical person, a human, enable it for each user as you're growing your business. And sometimes that can get overlooked. And it only takes one user, say out of a 100-person company, to not have 2FA, a simple password, and then they're compromised and the whole company could have a ransomware outbreak. When you talk about modern multi-factor systems, they use special codes on secure apps on your phone, as well as things like facial recognition, which greatly enhances the security and the ability to hack into someone's email. And we can also block the legacy apps from being able to bypass basic 2FA.
So you say facial recognition. My iPhone already does this now. Is that what you're talking about? Maybe something like that for my computer?
We incorporate that as part of the security solution. So if someone, for instance, steals your phone and they know your password, they still can't log in because their face is not going to unlock the app.
So another assumption that we see is that I've got a firewall. I've got a firewall on my network and my network is secure. So I've gone out and I've bought a firewall and I'm secure now because, nothing can get in or out of my network. Well, that's obviously not true because you still have to be able to surf the net, send and receive emails, download applications, things like that. And so the traditional firewall that maybe is being provided by your ISP, Comcast or AT&T or somebody else, or a firewall that you bought yourself and you set up and configured, it really needs ongoing love and attention, like on a regular basis. And I mean updates for the software, updates for the firmware. You're going to need definitions in some cases. So a lot of the better managed firewalls have an intrusion prevention system built in, where if something tries to get in there and start getting at your network and getting at your network resources, files and whatnot, then it'll just shut it down. The firewall is smart enough that it can just block any attempt, and that can be from the outside or from the inside. And so that's one of the things that the more generic firewalls, they really won't do a lot to internal traffic, right? They just believe if you're on the network, you're good. Not to mention the fact that your wireless might be set up wrong very easily, and that somebody else could even be on your network because they got on your wireless. So that's a pretty complicated topic, but just having a traditional firewall does not make you more secure by default.
Daniel, explain the difference between cloud managed and local managed firewalls.
Well, that's a good question. So a locally managed firewall means that you're going to have to go to a little web page in your web browser on the network, and you're going to have to log into that. You're going to have to update the firmware and update the software for it and set it up that way. Cloud managed usually is something that you have to pay for, but then you can be in some sort of a better protected portal where you have perhaps all your devices in there, all of your networks in there, and you can configure them from one central location. It usually requires some kind of a license or a subscription, and you get a lot for that, right? Like you're paying a company like Cisco, SonicWall, or Fortinet, somebody like that. You're paying them for the latest security updates for your network. So the protection of your network is verified by another company. And then of course it's managed in the best case scenario, somebody or a company to have a lot of these devices under their management, and they can just kind of look across the board and they know the best settings that can be applied, and they can be applied as a whole.
Cool.
Yeah. So Jim, what's another assumption we see?
Well, legacy antivirus is still widely used, and really it only protects companies against already known threats, which hackers exploit this because they can do tweaks to their malware and become zero-day threats, which your traditional AV can't stop, which is why we recommend using next generation AV, also known as EDR solutions. It uses artificial intelligence to look at the behavior of the malware, and it will block it if it suspects that it is malware, and usually will notify the user or quarantine it so the IT folks can take a look at it. And that's required really to stay up to high security to compete with the nation state. So we want to protect against that.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, I think you're making an important case there, which is that it's not just hackers, in their parents' basement that are trying to get in, but there are some big players, and there's a lot of money in this game, right? Ransomware is not cheap, and that's probably the worst fear. There used to be scareware where you just get a message on your screen and it'd say, "Oh no, you've got a virus. Watch out, call this number." Now they actually encrypt your files and you can't get to them. They are locked off. You're done until you pay some Bitcoin to some person on the internet. And then, the thing about that is you still don't know that they got rid of all of the, all of the remnants of whatever program they used to encrypt it. You don't know that they didn't leave themselves in a back door in case they need access to the ATM machine later on. So yeah, that's the big deal. Well, I know too, it looks like a lot of the cybersecurity insurance is asking for more advanced antivirus solutions, right?
Yep, and more 2FA for all of your applications. All of your VPNs are now 2FA required. So if you don't have that, you're going to be forced to, if you want to have cyber insurance, which really is required nowadays.
So another assumption is, okay, I've got a server down the hall, and this thing is brand new, top of the line, sitting down there in that office. It's connected to my network closet, so I'm good. So everything is right down there. I can put my hands on it, and I know that everything is fine, right? Or I've got a mirrored copy of that server, and those two are mirrors of each other, so I know everything is good, right? Well, you'd be surprised. So when you have a local server, you still have to access that local server, right? So it means it's going to have some sort of users, it has to be sharing some things. A lot of times you open up VPNs to the outside world so that your users can get in remotely and access the files on the server. Not to mention the fact that that server is going to need constant management. It's going to need updates to the software, upgrades to the hardware. That thing is the computer that everybody in the office is using. It needs to really be in the best shape of any computer in there. Just because you've got a local server in and of itself does not necessarily mean it's safe.
Way too many moving parts and open ports. Maybe one day is not a risk, and then the hackers figure out a way to compromise it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a risk. Exchange servers, SharePoint servers, those are typical targets for hackers for companies that have their own stuff in-house.
The next steps, if any of this resonates with you, we'd love to learn more about your company and what that might look like. We can help you come up with a strategy, help you come up with some tactics to get there. We want to help, and we do this all the time, every day. We've got a big team over at Stringfellow Technology Group that is pretty much obsessed with security and really wants to help companies stay secure and to prevent their users from getting locked out and hacked and things getting turned into ransomware. Our number's here on the screen. You can reach out to the consulting group. Jim and I would be more than happy to help with any sort of questions that you might have. So I hope this has been useful. Again, leave your comments and we'll be glad to answer those or get with us, and we'd love to help. Thank you so much and have a great day.